Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So, want to talk about ritual responsibility. Not just in ritual, but just responsibility, I guess, for other people's mental states and how powerful things can be and how dangerous they can be for certain people and how we need to step up if we see something happening and take care of ourselves. So, first off, never do a guided meditation the first time through, unless the person who's giving the guided meditation explains what's going to happen and you are okay with what's going to happen. I personally have had some pretty negative experiences with this, and some of you have also had negative experiences. I've talked to a few of you about it. And so, like, my negative experience happened in massage school. Well, one of them anyway. It happened in massage school when I was in training, and the power of visualization and guided meditations, they were all about that, and they decided they wanted to teach us empathy. Okay, I'm all about empathy since I'm an empath. It's kind of one of those things that's sort of hard for me to ignore. And I trusted them the first time that they did this because, they're the teachers and I figure they know what they're doing. So when I do a guided journey meditation or something like that, I'm like all in. It's like everything goes bam. It's just, I'm there 100%. I listen to every word they're saying. I embrace the narrative that they're sharing with me. And so, in this particular narrative, was this the one? Okay, that was the second one. The first one, at this point, I don't remember the narrative because they left me in such a terrible place. That's why I don't remember how it started, because, we were like going within ourselves and all this other stuff. And at the end of this guided meditation, they dumped me in a room with my father and left me there. This was a shock to my system because in no way would I ever have chosen to go through a guided meditation that would leave me face to face with the man who tortured and abused me throughout my entire childhood. That would not be a good thing for me. It broke me when they did that. I ended up in the corner of the building, in the room, crying for the next hour and a half. I could not take the next class. I couldn't do anything. I was totally shattered by them putting me in a room with my father. So I went to the administrator's office and I told them what happened to me and how dangerous I thought this was, because they're not trained psychologists, they're not counselors, they don't know everyone's history. This is just a generic guided meditation that they think is going to fit for everybody, and that's not a good idea. And I told them that if I was going to participate in any further guided meditations with them, I needed them to tell me what the meditation was about and what was coming before they did the meditation. And their idiotic response was that would ruin the effect. So I knew I was on my own at this point. And so the one I was starting to talk about, which I realized was not the first one, it was the second one. In that one, they were trying to teach us empathy. And I have this ability, I don't know how many of you can do this as well, but I have like an overviewer. I have a part of me, of my conscious mind, that I can split off and act as like a buffer between what they're saying, coming in, and what I'm doing as a guided meditation, or anything actually. I can use it for a lot of different purposes, but this was what I wanted it for. So I kind of split off that part of me and had it monitoring what was going on. And so they started off with you're elderly and you're you're just kind of like getting older and your muscles are giving way and your bones are creaking and you're in pain, you're irritable, you're losing your hearing, nobody's listening to you. And they're like, they really started painting this picture of being an old person. And when this started happening, when I got to that part, I just pulled myself out. I stopped immediately and I thought, my powers of visualization are so strong that if I fully engaged in this, I would become that. And that's not my idea of how I want to be as I age. Thank goodness I did that, because here I am. Not that. And another woman in the group, in the class, did the same thing. so that is a thing. Like, I already knew that was a potential hazard. I don't know why it didn't twig on me with a massage class school, because it seemed like such a different environment, I guess. And I didn't expect they would be doing something that was like so potentially dangerous to my psyche, being healers and whatnot. You can't trust anybody, apparently. Because I know that I had gotten like a subliminal tape when I lived up in the Kispiogs. And I bought it because it had two sides. One was the words he used. The second side was the words that you couldn't hear. They were the same words, but under music, so you couldn't hear them. So I listened to the side with the words, and I threw the tape away. Not interested in what that person had to say at all. It was all about forgiving heinous crimes that you've committed on other people. And I'm like, okay, that's not for me. Go away. So I tossed it. But that's the thing, is like, it's important for you to make your own choices and your own decisions about things. And guided meditations can be wonderful and powerful and healing and mind expanding and all sorts of things. But they can also lead you down a really dark road and harm you. And you're the only one who can, be the person who stops it. So be aware of that. And then there are some of the rituals that we have. When I was talking to my friend, we were talking about funerals. And the way that people who do funerals often manipulate the feelings of grief that everyone has. And I hadn't told her this before, so she heard this morning. The worst funeral I'd ever been at in my entire life was so incredibly manipulative, it was almost beyond belief. It was hard to imagine that it really happened, and yet my mother, me, and my sister were all there. So a friend of mine in high school, his sister was killed in a terrible car accident. It was a convertible. It was a rollover. She was like horrifically injured. Her fiance was driving the car. It was a week before their wedding that this happened. He survived. He had broken leg, and he was pretty injured himself. And so she was my friend's sister. So I went there to sort of be supportive for him because he had lost his sister. I had no idea what I was walking into. So we walk in the door. My mom, of course, had to take me there, and my other sister went along. And we walked in the door, and there's this woman. She's all dressed in black from head to toe, sort of Victorian. She's got her hair up, and she's playing the organ, and she's just doing the most solemn dirges you've ever heard. I mean, they were just like setting the mood for like a horrible time and, horrible loss. So then they staged this. For one, like I said, she was horrifically, her face wasn't where it was supposed to be. I mean, she was definitely not normal looking. And they had an open casket. And to try and hide the fact that she wasn't all there, they really couldn't reconstruct her completely. They used this weird purple veil over the opening. So if you looked down, you sort of saw kind of like a face, but you couldn't see the features completely. But it made it even worse somehow. It was just very odd. So then they put the casket on the stage, and they put the mother and father and brother on the stage with the casket. So they have the casket in the middle, and they've got the family around. And they put the fiancé on the floor in front. So then they buried her in her wedding dress, and then they read her vows to him as part of her eulogy, and he, understandably, completely flipped out. He started screaming, "It should have been me," I really, if this had happened now, I would be seriously concerned for his mental state and whether he was going to go out and commit suicide. He they dragged him away because of his screaming, and he's like going down the aisle in his cast and his crutches, trying to walk and just crying his heart out. By this point, me and my mom and my sister are all crying like crazy. It's like, we don't know these people, but wow. So, you think that would be bad enough, and that was really bad. Then they closed the casket in front of the family. And the mother actually leaped across the stage and jumped onto the coffin and started screaming and clawing at it, "Don't take my baby away from me." And they had to peel her off in order to get the casket out of the room to go to the cemetery. And after that experience, I think I was in high school. Like I said, it was a high school friend. I think I might have been a senior in high school. I decided I wanted to be cremated after that. I did not want anybody able to use my body as hostage to torture those I left behind. That was just so awful to me. Of course, now we at least have more options, I think, with the Celebrant Foundation that my friend is in, and other organizations that are they're shifting the focus of loss to celebration of the life kind of thing, which I think is way healthier, definitely. But this just is an example of the power of ritual. That was a ritual. There's no doubt about it. That was a performance ritual. That was intense. And it definitely had an impact on me and everyone else in the room. But there's other things, like I went to an event in Santa Cruz that was like a celebration or an acting, like a, what do they call it? Sort of a passion play kind of thing, except it was about Isis, Greek, Egyptian goddess of Isis. And, so I thought that'd be interesting to go see. And I was there in the audience, I was watching it. And then all of a sudden, at one point, the woman on the stage dedicated everybody in the room to Isis. And I was taken aback because I'm like, what? I mean, that's not going to harm me. I already have been dedicated to her. I've served her in several lifetimes. So it's not going to be an issue for me. But what about these other people? Like, all of a sudden, they now have a potential magical connection to the goddess Isis. It may not be on that path at all. It could be detrimental to what they're doing in their current life. So I felt that was incredibly irresponsible. So when you're attending a ritual as with a group of people that you don't know very well, one of the things that's important to ask is what kind of ritual it is and what are they planning on doing. And if they're all about, it's a surprise, you don't need to know, if you get a niggly feeling, don't go. I mean, there's probably a reason you're getting a niggly feeling. And if they haven't set it up so that you can leave if you feel you need to, because really that's what this should be about: choice, self-determination, boundaries, and what you're comfortable with. Like, So when you're planning your own ritual, think about those things and keep them in mind if you're going to do them for a group of people. You can get varying reactions. It can be a wonderful ritual, and some people are going to hate it because of their own internalized dialogue that they haven't dealt with in some cases, but sometimes because it just triggers something in them that you don't know is there. So try to always arrange it so that if somebody becomes uncomfortable, they know that it's okay and they're not in trouble if they don't feel like they want to stay. And that's important, to let them know it's okay for them to decide to leave. Of course, if you cast a circle, make sure that if they want to leave, they let you know so you can cut them out. So you don't have like the whole circle collapsing and have to rebuild the energy up all over again. And, so I think that those are rather important things to consider and to think about when we're learning about how to do ritual and performing ritual and that kind of thing. And simple things can be a lot more powerful than you know. We had our friend, male friend of my husband's, who wanted to have a very just sort of I'm going to start looking around and explore the idea of magic being real. And, Ian wrote a very simple ritual, which was basically, here's a line in the sand, step on the other side of that line, and that's your commitment. Once you step over, you can't come back. And that was it. He showed it to me. We talked about it. I didn't see anything in it that would trigger anybody. And it triggered his friend so bad. He just now, like 30 years later, told him about what happened and how he felt. So he's okay now, but I mean, we would have liked to have known at the time, because maybe we could have done something to like calm it down and help him out or whatever. But yeah, so again, you learn as you go, and you make mistakes, so there you go. So hopefully that's helpful. And if you have questions about whether you if you're worried that something you're planning may not work for other people, you can always send me an email, and I'll let you know my opinion. But in the end, it's up to you about what I think it means, or what it might do, or what you might look at. And I am willing to tell people what I think about things. I'm sure you figured that out by now. But I don't expect people to necessarily follow my direction, because, we're individuals. And you have to make up your own mind. So, there's that. Anyway, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.